Great draft tips there from some of our Spotlight Series top limited players. Well, everybody, it's time for round number 10. So let's set up the match in our feature match area coming up for this round. We'll be watching Jody Keith. That's super sweet. Mono black deck currently sitting at 8-1 up against Yann Alexandre Chouinard, currently sitting at 7-2. Let's get to meet our players. Jody Keith, a grinder, has been playing for a very long time, started in 1994, has 3 Grand Prix top 8s and 1 win that came in 2019, wants to play in all 4 events. Let's take a look at Jody Keith's road here in the Pro Tour. Just 1 loss there you can see on day 1 of competition. It was to Christian Baker, our undefeated player overnight, who is no longer undefeated because Jody Keith just beat him last round.
He got revenge.
The revenge win, you love to see
that
it.
always feels the best.
Let's take a look at his opponent this round. Yann Alexandre Chouinard started playing in 2010, qualified via an RC in Prague. Goal is to requalify for the next event. We'll need 10 wins to do that. There's our players. Tell me about these decks, Corey.
Yeah, let's take a look at it. You said it right, though. This deck is sweet. Mono black is something you basically do not see. You know, the color pairs are so balanced, so you're almost disadvantaged when you're picking a single color deck. But when you have some really, really powerful bombs, then you can really pull this off. We have Jet, we have our just indestructible god there, as well as Summon Primal Odin, which is one of just the best cards in the set, full stop. Let's take a look at Jody's opponent. This deck is also awesome. Another Jet, so we got that going on, as well as one of the most powerful rares in the set. We have Sin to be able to eat up all these extra spells, and Summon Titan to be able to ramp yourself, get a lot of value going. I mean, there is a ton of rares, a lot of good stuff going on here. Maybe not as much removal from really either player. We have like 1 Sephiroth intervention here. Jody had 1 Vayne's Treachery, but I guess we have 1 Chocobo kick as well, but very light on removal, so they're just going to be jamming their bombs together and see who can come out on top.
Slugfest, perhaps?
Yes, there we go.
I'm very excited for this matchup. Let's get it underway. Cedric and Monty, welcome to day 2. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Maria, and the rest of the wonderful desk crew. Cedric Phillips, Monty DeVuti, our first time in the booth today. Pleasure to be with you as we are going to get into round number 2 of Final Fantasy limited coverage. We saw Jody Keith a little bit last round. We're going to see more of him this round and this very, very, very good mono black deck.
Yeah, I think mono black in the format doesn't exist unless you get a Zodiark kind of early in the draft, and then maybe you can start considering it. It's very much a card that you build around rather than start drafting mono black and hope you get past it in pack or whatever.
We would agree.
We're not living that life here, and I think Jody made excellent use of the Zodiark. Looking at his deck list, there definitely is something going on where he got exactly enough playables if we're stretching the meaning of playables, but he's playing every black card available to him and most of the artifacts just to get to 40. But, you know, his first 19, 18 playables are excellent.
Yes.
Right? And they're so good that it made the strategy worth doing and pursuing.
Yeah, the rest is a little bit filler, but the filler cards aren't so bad. Cards like Vincent's Limit Break doesn't see a ton of play in this limited format, but Resentful Revelation does, and that's what you're going to see Jody kick off this game with. So we'll take a look at a couple of cards. Swamps will go to the graveyard, 1 card added to the hand, and we're going to head back Yann's way. These 2 players having a nice little start to their turns, but there's a lot of rounds left in this Pro Tour. What makes this so much fun is the difference, as they were talking about at the news desk, between winning and losing a match at this stage of the tournament. Jody loses this match, he goes to 8-2, not the end of the world. But if he wins this match and moves on to 9-1, then those top 8 dreams are very much in view.
Yeah, absolutely, especially given the record that he had in Constructed yesterday, going 4-1, and just feeling good about his Constructed deck in a field of prowess. Notably, Jody did win his first match with his deck.
Yes.
Yann lost the first match. Yann is 0-1 in this draft currently, and that's 2 losses in a row for him, coming off the loss he suffered in the last round yesterday now.
Yeah, when Yann was playing for the 8-0,
right,
to be on the top of the standing. So a slight losing streak here, but off to a very good start, that is for sure. Looks like we're going to see a Summon Titan here mill a couple of cards. Lands might be coming back after that if it's able to make it to chapter number 2 on the summon. So Jet gets milled over both players. We won't see that this particular game, most likely. Jody's going to take a good look at Summon Titan. We can as well. The 5-mana 7/7 Saga Giant has Reach and Trample. On that second chapter of the Saga, we can see all the lands come back from the graveyard. And then if Yann is lucky enough to get to chapter 3, one of those creatures in the battlefield is going to get very large, partner.
Yeah, and one of the things that you typically hope for when you are drafting the Zodiark strategy of Mono Black is you're going to have access to some of the better removal spells that Black has. That's not really the case for Jody's deck, unfortunately. As much as it does have powerful rares and it has that top end, one of the things that he is lacking is a robust removal suite. So the chances of this Titan being able to resolve both of his following chapters, bringing that land advantage back and pushing a big trampling attack through is pretty likely here.
Well, here comes Titan. Going to come across for at least 7. You can see Yann's hand right now. There's a copy of Vincent's Limit Break, the T-Rexar, a Swamp, and a Trino Dark City. We'll get to those in a moment. Right now, Keith is going to decide how to block, if at all. And you can see Jody's hand does have the Zodiark, the main reason that he is in Mono Black alongside Summon Primal Odin, the Final Days, and Vincent's Limit Break. Looks like Keith is going to do a little bit of blocking here. Remember that Titan does have Trample, so 4 damage is going to come through. And now there is the T-Rexar trigger, of course. Chouinard will gain a little bit of life, up to 23. Certainly the aggressor in the game is the Canadian as we head back over to Jody.
Yeah, and I think Yann has definitely set up a multi-turn plan here that sort of revolves around Vincent's Limit Break being the play on Titan next turn, just to continue that pressure rather than having it be a one and done and it's gone. So definitely something that, of course, in an open decklist event, Jody may be considering, but also Jody's plays are pretty forced here. I have 5 mana. I'm going to put Zodiark in play, get this board a little under control. Of course, your opponent has the choice of what they're sacrificing. So the 2 large creatures pretty likely sticking around the Gugu Gardener and the hero token, most likely the sacrifices here.
Yeah, Zodiark is an interesting card. It's one that players have to read over a couple of times because you do read it and it, of course, does read powerful, but a lot of players haven't had the opportunity to actually play with it just yet because it's a mono black card and you really can't draft mono black that often in this format. So it's the kind of card that when you get passed to you in pack, maybe middle pack 1, pack 2, pack 3, you just kind of go, that's not a thing for me. Here is that copy of Vincent's Limit Break here for Chouinard. We are going to see that target Titan, as you did mention. So that's going to come back here in just a moment.
Maybe ask a judge to see what.
And it looks like we're going to need a little bit of clarification on exactly how this does work. So we'll let the players talk just a bit.
I'm going to put the counter there.
+7.
Yeah. And then it's coming back.
And 5 again. Okay.
So here's your Titan Mill, because it has come back via Vincent's Limit Break text.
Yeah, and that was a 7 power buff with Trample, though the Trample is redundant. That went on the Rexwar there.
Did he sacrificed this as part of the saga? Because if so, this would trigger.
It's not a sacrifice. It goes to the graveyard. Let me check.
Yeah, they're going to check on here on the saga. Is it a sacrifice?
Good question.
Or is it just die sort of thing? Because, of course, when a player sacrifices another creature, you get a +1/+1 counter on the Zodiark.
Right. It doesn't matter how the sacrifice happens, and it is actually a sacrifice as part of the rules of resolving sagas. The 3rd chapter has you sacrifice it, or whatever the last chapter may be, as you can see in that top line of text. So that is an extra counter on the Zodiark. The indestructible creature can block here, but the trample on this large attack, this is an attack for 13 at the moment, means that just Zodiark getting across as an 8 toughness blocker is still a lot of damage going
13
through.
minus 8 is 5.
Looks like it's going to be
I
5.
don't think so.
So we go to 9.
Okay, so Keith's going to fall down to 9. And that Zodiark did a nice job of soaking up all of that Titan stuff that was happening that turn alongside the T-Rexar. So maybe a little bit surprising how ineffective that attack was. Is now here's Ignis going to take a look at the top 6 cards and ideally find a land and put it on the battlefield tapped here. Going past a couple of good ones in Sin and Sephiroth's Intervention. Yeah, those are going to be headed to the bottom.
Okay.
And now all Yann can do is pass the turn back to Jody Keith, who I don't want to say in the driver's seat just yet, but I think the positioning is pretty good here. There is a copy of Odin in hand. A couple copies, I think, of Vincent's Limit Break still. Maybe just one. A copy of the Final Days, which is not ideal at this exact stage of the game. But Keith has a game to navigate here, I would say.
Yeah, and he definitely has a position where yes, things don't look the best on board, but given what we know of his hand in the copy of Summon Primal Odin that is castable thanks to that treasure token here, or the copy of Sir Conrad, which is likely going to be the next turn follow-up, these whammies are going to get the board back under control for him.
Yeah, now here is that copy of Primal Odin. Looks like that's going to take care of Titan. And it will.
Yeah, as much as Titan is the temporary creature here, it does have a limited amount of time on the board. It is representing the most likely lose condition for Jody. So getting that off the board here will result in the most consistent win over the next few turns rather than risking it.
And Jody's going to come across here for 3 points of damage, feeling as though he's in an advantageous position, can actually start attacking here. Again, Zodiark is so large, it's such a good blocker in a situation like this that you're not really terribly concerned with the T-Rex are if you are Keith in this situation. So looks like the Bard's Bow is going to be equipped on Ignis here. And we might see a follow-up, and that's going to be Cecil. And we're going to head back Jody Keith, so I know good attacks here for Yann. So I would say that Jody has started to stabilize. Chapter 2 here on Summon Primal Odin means that if it does connect with Yann, the game will end on the spot.
Yeah, it is a very scary line of attack.
Yes,
of
it
course,
is.
With no real evasion for Odin. It is not the most likely outcome in a lot of scenarios, but it is one of those cards that is demanding an answer.
Oh, Sephiroth too.
Oh, yes.
Oh, I missed that one.
Yeah.
I missed that one. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, this deck's a banger.
The hits will continue coming until the game ends,
Okay.
says Jody Keith.
All right, so Sephiroth Fabled Soldier is going to join the battlefield. ETB, whenever it enters or attacks, you may sacrifice another creature if you do draw a card. This one is very powerful, to be sure. I can certainly see why Jody Keith is in mono black now. You mentioned that cards maybe 19 through 23 were a little bit lacking. Well, cards 1 through 18, boy, they look good.
Oh, yeah. No, Jody, you know, with how much people are prioritizing black as one of the top colors in the format, you shouldn't really expect to be getting an incredible mono black deck. But when you do, oh, it's going to be good.
Yeah, and these interactions are getting completely outrageous. You saw Primal Odin. It forces a block, of course. So now Vincent's Limit Break is going to bring Primal Odin back, enter the battlefield, kill a creature. Sephiroth, I think, just transformed.
One-winged angel.
We have a one-winged angel here. Kenny Omega would be so proud. My goodness, look at this. Look at this.
Yeah, and, you know, unfortunately for Yann, the writing has been on the wall for us viewing it for a while because we could see Jody's hand. We knew that these hits were going to start coming time after time after time, and Zodiark just being an indestructible blocker that's been sitting there the whole time, making sure that Yann can't put any more pressure on Jody's life total. It has resulted in this scenario where Yann had a great start to the game, and then we knew that things were just going to start falling back, given the quality of Jody's hand.
Whoo, buddy. This is a beatdown unlike I have seen in this limited format. I've been on the receiving end of quite a few, but this is frankly almost as good as it gets for anything I've seen in the format. I mean, we've seen some pretty cool Towns decks, so on and so forth, but I mean, Jody's deck, I'm not going to call it unbeatable, but it is humming.
It is a very strong deck. It definitely is ultimately not asking you to do much to close out the games as long as you can draw 2 of your good cards, and there are quite a few good cards to draw here.
I think that's a pretty good attack here from Jody. This one's pretty safe. Oh my goodness.
I'm drawing a card. You're also losing 1 here. So you're taking 2. I'm gaining 1. That's getting a counter. I'm drawing a card.
That's it, though.
Yeah.
You're taking 2. I'm gaining 1. That's getting a counter. I'm drawing a card. P.S. Would you like to block?
Yeah, now you can go to blocks. One of these has to be blocked or you're dying immediately. The other one is a 5/5 flyer, so that one you're probably not wanting to block here, even though you do have a reach creature. And I have my Indestructible God.
Yeah. Ooh, buddy. Well, the Scorpion's going to jump in front of Primal Odin, otherwise, you know, the game would end. But one could argue. One could argue.
One could.
The game the game is already over. This is
I
very...
wouldn't make that argument.
No, but this is a very one-sided affair here. It looks like maybe going to be an activation here. Scorpion, of course, is going to get run over by the Odin.
No, you're
Right, this is the Pro Tour. We're not calling anything.
Oh, we don't call it over immediately. But
Right, no.
Imagine what it would take for Yann to win this game. Where's it still like?
Well, I don't have to because I'm looking at his deck list.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Jody Keith is going to win game number 1 here over Yann Chouinard, as that was a dominant display from the Louisiana native. You know, talking to Jody coming into this tournament, if you were with us yesterday, you saw his constructed deck a little bit. It was a very innovative take on a Golgari Graveyard deck that hopefully we'll have the opportunity to see at the constructed portion of today. But when I spoke to him at the Players' Party on Thursday, his plan for this tournament was very simple. He said 5 wins in limited minimum. He thought he was capable of 6-0, which you don't hear a lot of people say that when we talk to him at players' parties or just leading up into an event. But he said 5 wins minimum is where I think I'm at, and then the constructed deck, I want to get paired against Izzet Prowess and Mono Red as much as possible. And if that happens, I think I'm going to have a really, really good tournament. Now remember, the way that he qualified for this event was at that Spotlight Series in Denver, Colorado, where he got 2nd place. It was a limited event. He lost in the finals to Andrew Beckstrom. But during that tournament, Jody ran off 10 straight wins. So clearly he feels very comfortable in limited formats. And P.S., he hasn't lost in limited yet this weekend. And I'm having a hard time imagining him losing with this deck.
Yeah, especially in this situation because we're a bit into game 2 now, and Yann is missing green with a handful of green cards.
Yep, that makes it very tough.
So already falling behind, and the early turns are all important in a matchup like this where Jody Keith's late game is nigh unbeatable.
Yes.
We've seen the quality of the cards that he has access to with time.
Yep.
So when you're not putting any pressure on, and Yann's deck is not very good at putting pressure on, we should be clear. This is a Sultai deck that is built to go a bit further up, right? You have Ignis giving you ramp, and you're trying to play 6 drops and 7 drops. So you're already not putting early pressure on. But in a game like this, it does really feel like you just have such an uphill battle ahead of you.
Whew. All right, well, here's Ignis looking for lands. Okay, so the forest problem is solved. The land cycling of the 3 Rexar, and now Ignis finding a basic forest. Green mana no longer is a problem. Jody's battlefield might be, but at least the mana's online now for Yann.
Right, and Jody's already presenting just such a clock in between the Salvagers and the Sir Conrad landing on the board. These creatures can just turn sideways, and even if Yann is able to eat one with the Demon Wall, that eat comes at a very hefty cost.
Yeah, you see this Sir Conrad before combat, and now the attack with the 2/2s, and then of course the hero from the Black Mage's Rod. There will be triggers upon death because of the Salvagers and the Sir Conrad on the battlefield. So Jody's actually able to make an attack that maybe looks a little bad on the surface, but doesn't mind the exchange because of the triggers that are happening when the creatures are dying. So that's a positive there for Keith in that exchange. Now, let's turn our attention to Yann, who is behind in this game, yes, but a copy of Sephiroth's Intervention, is pretty timely to take care of Sir Conrad. Bard's Bow, Cecil in hand. So the ability to actually stabilize things, very realistic right now.
Yeah, Yann is definitely in a position to answer the board and is slightly ahead in terms of hands, especially what we can see. But the question is, how much more does he need if Jody draws one of his good cards?
Yeah.
2 of his good cards. And one more thing that Yann has to be aware of is the existence of the final days there in Jody's graveyard.
Very true.
Because if you answer this whole board, then that final days is starting to get powered up.
Oh, there is that Sephiroth's Intervention going after Sir Conrad. I like doing this on the main phase here. 1, you don't want your opponent to untap with Sir Conrad. 2, you know that your opponent has at least 1 copy of Vincent's Limit Break in their deck. So take care of that now, no questions asked. Don't run yourself into any unnecessary problems. So, Sir Conrad, that problem is solved. Curious what Yann wants to do next on his turn.
Yeah, Ignis being a legendary creature, you're pretty incentivized not to run out the redundancy out there. Looking at the size of the creatures that are being presented, Cecil and Bard's Bow do a pretty equal job answering the board, so you'd rather run out the more mana efficient play, save the 1 mana play for a future turn where you can potentially combo it alongside a Rexar to use your mana to its limit.
I could also equip Bard's Bow. The equip cost on that one is a little bit hefty there in 6 mana, so Cecil being 1, Bard's Bow equip cost being 6. That's also a nice 7 mana play on a potential future turn, excuse me. For now, we're going to turn our attention back over to Keith, who's sitting at 22 life, 8-1 here in Las Vegas. Picked up a copy of Deadly Dispute.
Yeah, is your hand running low? Boy,
Maybe not for much longer.
Solution.
Yeah.
Yeah, he does have the option to run out the Namazu Trader, make a treasure,
Bag, you for 1.
and
Get another horror.
just leave up the Deadly Dispute, but instead just opting to go even more aggressive and just flash back the final days in this situation.
Yeah, the final days in this spot is a little interesting, right? Because it's not getting a ton of value. It's 6 mana just for a 2/2 that does enter the battlefield tap. There is a black, there's a wizard trigger there from the equipment that's on the battlefield, the Black Mage's Rod, excuse me. But, we can sometimes see much larger flashbacks there. I'm curious why Jody felt that was the route to go down.
Yeah, it's interesting to me considering he did have an avenue to find more cards and extend this game without feeling like that was the situation. It did not feel like a forced play to me. So Jody's vision of the game and how the next few turns are going to go is definitely one that we are not expecting while looking at it. So he's certainly got a plan, as we said, very accomplished limited player, very good at what he does, but it is the type of situation where he's setting up something that we're not immediately seeing.
You're going to see a double block on the Bard's Bow equipped creature. There'll be a couple of triggers from the Salvagers there, and now Cecil will be played post-combat. Of course, the 5 damage does come through to Keith as well. So we're going to head back Jody's way now. Again, we know about the Mazu Trader, the copy of Deadly Dispute. Oh, and little Ahriman, the 2/2 flying Death Touch in hand now.
Yeah, so Jody has some options here. Can add the Trader to the board, then use the Treasure to cast the Ahriman, can leave up the Deadly Dispute. But the Demon Wall is on the board, and one of the cool things about the Demon Wall, of course, is unlike some of the similar cards that we've seen in the past, it's not a one-time ability. So if you need a mana sink, you can continue growing the wall, and that is going to be a threat going deeper into the game.
Yes, indeed.
Sack the treasure, drain you for 1.
So here's the Treasure, little drain for 1. The Salvagers, looks like Yann wants to take a look at that. Is it just draining when creatures die? No, it's treasures too. And now here's Ahriman. So Keith has kind of gummed up this battlefield a little bit and is simply going to pass the turn back. Both players with a Death Touch are on the battlefield, worth noting as we head back over Yann's way.
Yeah, definitely Yann very flooded right now. And one of the reasons that we do have to attribute Jody just aggressively popping off the final days there, of course, is the existence of Ignis on the board.
Sure.
Knowing that your opponent is able to exile it on any turn where they have excess mana, and saying that, okay, well, right now you seem a little flooded maybe, so you're not going to have a choice but to do it, so I may as well pop this off now. And Jody just saying that rather than playing to what is in his hand, he's playing to maximize every resource to its fullest, even if it is not the longest going forward potential.
Yeah, I guess that's a get what you can approach.
Right.
Yeah. Which if it is just 6 mana to get a 2/2 and a Black Mage's Rod trigger, look, it's not the best final days we've ever seen, but it's better than no final days being casted at all.
Right. Yeah, a 2/2 zombie, you're not ecstatic about it. Maybe there's still an argument to be made to playing to the board and trying to find some of your better cards by having access to this Deadly Dispute, but ultimately maximizing your resources is never a bad strategy in Limited. It is a format that revolves around doing what you can with lower power level cards and limited resources.
Yeah, very true. Bard's Bow, where are you going to go? Looks like it's going to be on Ignis.
Yeah, Yann would very much like to get some value out of this Ignis in terms of trading it off for a creature, just to be able to cast the second one from his hand and get another land, thin the library a bit, and continue going deeper. One of the issues, again, for Yann right now is the understanding of not just the game state currently, but the game state at large, which is knowing that relatively Jody's top end is a lot more powerful than his. Yann does have access to a copy of Sin in his deck. That card is very strong, and if he was to draw it, it would be quite good here. But ultimately, Jody has 4 cards that if he draws at any point, they're incredible.
Yep.
So very much a situation where Yann feels like he's on the clock, even if he is not imminently.
Now remember, Jody does have this copy of Deadly Dispute in hand. Curious how he wants to go about using that. Looks like he'll play the Swamp that drew for the turn. Last card in hand is that Deadly Dispute. Also, don't forget that because of the Ahriman, there is the ability to sacrifice various things to be able to get deeper into his deck to find Sephiroth or other powerful black cards that he does have access to.
Yeah, this is a situation where Yann is offering up this Ignis as a trade. And from Jody's perspective, getting Ignis off the board is very appetizing. It's very appealing to have this creature off the board, not giving your opponent any sort of food tokens, any access to graveyard hate. When you have Yann down to 11, you want to be able to attack that life total. But there's also a reason that Yann is choosing to sacrifice, quote unquote, this Ignis rather than, let's say, the Cecil in this situation.
Yep.
And that's something that Jody has to be thinking about in this situation. Maybe that's part of what he's asking away from the table to a judge is the flavor text of something in particular. Not flavor text, oracle text, excuse me. But as things stand, this is a situation where Yann is offering up an appetizing trade, and Jody has to be asking himself, why is this happening?
Yeah, why is this here?
Right.
Why is this available?
Right.
Which is a good thing to be thinking about. So Jody's going to take a moment to ask our table judge a question and get a clarification on something. While he does do that, of course, Cedric Phillips, Monty DeVuti, we are here in the booth. It's round number 10, our feature match here between Jody Keith and Yann Chouinard, in which Jody Keith is up 1 with a very powerful mono-black strategy. We are, of course, joined by Marshall Sutcliffe, Paul Cheon, and our wonderful friends of the news desk, Maria Corey and Ailey Loney. Eventually today, Monty, at some point, 8 players are going to be really, really happy at the end of the day.
We are a long way away from that. We
are.
have another round of draft, and we have a whole lot more constructed to get through. But at the end of the day, we will be getting a top 8. And, you know, if Jody Keith is going to continue playing the way he has, sniffing out the fact that this Ignis being offered up on a silver platter is a little too convenient and just opting not to attack there, I would say that he might be in the zone.
Yeah, he might be one of those 8 that we do see on the Sunday stage, the best part of professional Magic. But we don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. There's still plenty of game left to be played here and plenty of games left to be played over the course of the weekend. For now, Keith just passed in the turn back, and Jack was the draw for Yann. A card that both players have access to, and a very powerful black rare.
Yeah, it's very much one of those cards that demands an answer. The amount of value if this card goes unchecked or pseudo-unchecked is too high to overcome in a lot of situations. Unfortunately, when you draw it in this scenario, that is where the card displays a certain amount of weakness. A 4/3 Menace, still difficult to block, but if Jody has a sizable board and access to multiple blockers, and you don't have any tricks to take advantage of this, then you are not really being provided with an opportunity to take full advantage of that.
So Cecil's going to come in. Looks like it's going to trade with the trader. And of course, when Cecil does deal damage, you lose the life. So it looks like Yann's probably going to fall down a little bit lower to, I believe, 9. Looks like it's actually going to end up being 8. And now there is Jacked. So it looks like the Ahriman. I'm going to see a little sacrifice now. We're going to head back Keith's way.
Is that Odin?
Well,
No, Anima.
Anima.
All right. Cards, not a problem for Jody now.
No. Between this and Deadly Dispute, that's not going to be a problem.
Ahriman, Deadly Dispute, and Anima will fill up this hand. And that means that Yann is suddenly... and the Heck Dice.
Yeah, Heck Dice gets the last one.
And, you know, if I'm in Jody's seat, I'm feeling really satisfied with myself for not attacking with that Ahriman last turn.
Yeah.
You see the second Ignis and you're like, God, I'm smart.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
And now clear for takeoff.
Immediate attack.
Yeah, if you want to make your trade with the Ignis that has the Bard's Bow on it, which means it has reach by all means. And Jody's got to be feeling comfortable here. He's got an Anima that's on the battlefield, going to be able to provide some additional cards. So there's a lot to like here if you're in Jody Keith's situation. And it looks like Ignis is going to take care of the Sir Conrad for good, and a food token will be on the way here.
Yeah, so this is going to be a trade. The food token got eaten immediately. So up to 10 for Yann, then the salvagers will trigger from the Ahriman dying, and down to 9, which isn't the most precarious life total, but you're not in a great position.
That's mana very quickly. All right, Jack's going to get fired up.
Drew Chocobo Kick, I believe.
Yep, that's what I saw as well.
So that is a way to answer the Anima and allow an attack from Jack now. With 5 toughness, you are still being challenged by the board, but it would require every creature from Jody getting in front of the Jack to trade with it.
So kick.
Kick it.
Kick it real good. Going to be a trigger there, of course, in the Salvager. So 22-8 now looks to be the game score. And now will Jack attack? The answer is yes.
I'm gonna read this.
Yeah.
Jody wants to read the back, so.
Let's get a full sense of what's happening. Of course, Jody does have a copy of Jack in his deck, as you mentioned, but you really want to be sure about what is going to happen to you if you choose not to sacrifice 2 creatures here. Jody, of course, understanding the cost of getting Jack off the board is all 3 of his creatures. In that scenario, then he's dealing with a Deadly Dispute in hand that he has nothing to sacrifice to, and a Menace creature that can grow in the Demon Wall on the other side of the board, and suddenly the game becomes losable. But if you just chump with 2, you still have a Jack on the other side of the board, and you only have 1 creature left, so you don't have a block next turn.
Correct.
So this is a consideration where, in both cases, things are bad for Jody.
Okay, so there's your double block. Couple Salvagers triggers, so 24-6. This is a rock and a hard place here for Jody Keith, as spell is very important on this draw step. Remember, only card in hand right now for either player is Jody Keith's Deadly Dispute. Didn't get a great look at that draw step immediately. Well, it's something that was so...
Sephiroth.
Well, what do we do with this?
Well, we threaten a double block and then Deadly Dispute one of our creatures. And I would say that Jody hopes to draw exactly Vane's Treachery is the hope, and is still not very good.
Yeah, this is interesting because one thing to note is that Jody Keith is at a very high life total, so he can presumably take some hits. I don't know if he necessarily wants to.
Yeah, he could let Jet go through.
Yes.
It's a matter of, can he win with the resources he has in that spot, as I think that was Titan being drawn for Yann.
I think that may have been a nice draw step there for Yann.
Yeah, this is purely a matter of resources now. Jody can say, okay, I can survive if I just take this and hope that your resources are worse than the pressure I'm presenting. I don't like that.
It's not my favorite.
No.
It's not my favorite. Well, this is the double block on Jack.
Drain you for 3, 1. This one sees this one, and this one sees itself.
Does it see
So it's
itself?
3. This one sees itself, not that one.
So you want this
3
one?
times.
Yeah, it looks like a drain for 3.
3. I took 5.
So Jody's ultimately going to end up taking 2. Gain 3, take 5, net 2. Jack should be down.
So I took 5.
Jack should be
Gained
down.
3, so I take 2 from my
Yeah, I gave you 2 first.
24. basically.
I got
Yeah.
22, I got them at 23. Is it?
I should be at 22. I was at 24, and I net lost.
Okay, I do at 25.
I gained 3 and lost 5. So
Yeah, I'm
it's
missing
dead.
a few of these.
All right, looks like we're all good on communication now. Titan. Mill 5 lands among them. There are 2.
Is that a Gishel Greens that got milled as well?
I
So that's
think
another
so.
creature.
Let's see what this draw step is these players are going deep into this one.
That's a swamp. So
That's
Jody's
not great.
got nothing here.
Yep. And you just play that swamp and pass the turn back. Now remember, we know that Jody Keith just has Deadly Dispute in hand. Titan's going to trigger. Sin, Spear's Punishment is the draw step. And now Yann is starting to cook a little bit here, partner.
Yeah, I mean, Jody is essentially in check right now. He has one turn to draw something, because if Yann says that I'm not in any position to hold anything back given my spot, I'm just going to attack you and cast a Sin, or even just flash back Additional Greens if he wants to play it a little safe, which I would not personally against Jody's deck in the spot.
Go for bro.
Yeah,
there it is.
For bro.
There's Sin.
This is check. And again, I don't know if Jody's deck, with all of his great cards, can come back from this spot.
Yeah, this is one of those situations where I think to myself, okay, what can Jody draw? My first thing that I would think is something like Odin.
Right.
Which is a removal spell and a creature. Okay,
Right.
well, another creature's actually joining the battlefield now here in Cecil, so I don't think Odin's going to be quite nearly good enough, and I'm not even sure if it was before Cecil joined the fray. So let's see what this is. This is a little rat, an Undercity Dire rat to be precise. Treasure on the way, actually multiples because of the Deadly Dispute. So 2 treasures, 2 draws, swamp, doesn't matter. Game number 3, here we come, as Yann Chouinard able to tie things up against Jody Keith's very powerful mono black deck. But Yann, as we saw, has quite a few good cards too.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, for Jody, definitely not the time now, but if you're reflecting on this match after the fact, you have to ask yourself, the double block versus the triple block on the Jack that turn, how much difference does that make if you trade everything and then you leave yourself open to the Sephiroth top deck or another top deck? Could be completely different.
And there's the old 1-3. Vane's Treachery not going to take care of that. Jody a little slow out of the gate here, really nothing to do. You see the hand there, fight on the final days. Vane's Treachery with no targets just yet. As Keith's going to fall down to 19. And the other side of things here for Yann, not a bad hand. Ignis, T-Rexar, Heck Eyes, and a couple of lands. So the colors are all working. A little bit of acceleration. We could see Balam T-Rexar as soon as next turn.
Yeah, and, you know, Ignis presents a big problem for Jody's deck in that it is a value creature. It comes down and immediately, most of the time, gets you something, but it's also threatening the graveyard. So it demands a removal spell in a lot of situations when you have a game plan that involves cards like the Final Days and Fight On in Jody's hand. But now you've used one of your few removal spells, one of the few ways that you have to kill a card like this T-Rexar that I would assume Yann is just slamming onto the table here, and suddenly Jody's looking at his 2/2s and his Fight On and his Sir Conrad and is like, huh, I had a Vane's Treachery here a second ago.
Yeah.
Where'd that go?
Well, here's Sir Conrad. That's going to join the battlefield right away. And summon Primal Odin with Jody Keith's draw step. Now, that is huge for a multitude of reasons. One, it's a removal spell for the T-Rexar. 2, it is a removal spell that you can get back with Fight On. So that may have been the perfect draw step there for Keith. We'll see how these next couple of turns do play out. But if you are rooting for the mono black mage there from Louisiana, that was a timely one.
Yeah, there are definitely haymakers being drawn from both sides because Yann just drew Summon Titan.
Sure.
So suddenly he's like, all right, one good draw deserves another. And this is an interesting choice for Jody. Of course, having Summon Odin in hand is you could go for a double block here
could.
and then say, I have Odin for the next threat. Or you could take the damage and say, all right, well, I have Odin, you play something, and then I just force my way through by killing that and just ignoring this Rexar altogether.
You saw maybe a little bit of a reaction there from Keith. A slight frowny face there once the Titan joined the battlefield, because now that means there's a lot of different things that he has to try to take care of. Titan and the T-Rexar are both very good. There's Heck Dies. The discard here probably has to be Fight On.
I think it has to be. Jody cannot risk discarding the swamp and not drawing the land for Odin. Look, Jody, I don't know if he's a gambler, but that would be a gamble for the ages.
Here's what we know. You're not discarding Primal Odin. The other two, it's a little bit of a conversation, and I'm kind of into this conversation.
All I'm saying is, what city are we in right now?
I know where we are.
Does Jody feel it in the air?
What would you discard at home, folks? What would you do? You discard Fight On? Or do you discard that swamp? Because if you keep that fight on and you draw swamp, you feel like a genius. And I also think the chances of you winning the game if you peel that swamp are pretty high. But there goes the fight on.
Discipline.
The very
discipline.
disciplined decision. The less risky of the bunch. Was it a swamp?
It was Zodiark.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Well, now, which one of these do you play?
I'm slamming the Zodiark here.
Yeah?
I don't really think you can lose if you just play Zodiark into this board, make your opponent sacrifice half of their creatures, so both of the small support creatures go away, and you still get to have Primal in your hand.
And then you just assume that you're able to beat these big creatures? I think maybe that's your best thought. Is here
A
comes
large, indestructible creature.
Well, I mean, look, that large indestructible creature, you are playing against a blue strategy. Blue does have the best clean answers to a card like the Zodiark. There's Ice Magic. There's the 3-mana thing that taps your creature and taps it down for good. And you're not getting Jody's best things in this exchange, right?
Yes, it is the riskier play, but it is definitely the play that maximizes how the game goes forward.
Sure. Well, we are here now as we're going to head back over to Yann, who does have a copy of Ice Magic in hand, along with a Forest and a Bard's Bow. A couple of lands are headed back. Now looks like 1, 2, is it 3 all day? Looks like it is 3 all day that are going to come back tapped.
Yeah, if this was next turn, if we were dealing with the 3rd chapter of Titan being what is represented, I think it's a completely different discussion. You can't risk going for the Zodiark in that spot. But when you're only dealing with the 2nd chapter and you have another turn to avert disaster, I think the Zodiark is the acceptable line. Now, one thing that is interesting here that does need to be mentioned is both of the creatures for Yann right now have trample. So Yann could make an attack here with the Ice Magic in hand and just say, go to blocks. You have fun. Because if Jody just blocks with the Zodiark here, he's dead. I'm counting lethal.
Interesting.
Does Jody smell that out?
That's a fair question, partner. Remember, open deck list.
Yeah.
And also when you think about if you even take open deck list out of the equation, you think about what can my opponent have playing against blue. If you're well-versed in the format, you know about cards like Ice Magic. So you think about that. This is a very, very interesting call. There's a block maybe there. Uh-oh.
That's it.
Is that it?
That's it. 13. That's what Yann checks.
Hang on.
Doing the math. Double check the math. Triple check
There's
the math.
Ice Magic.
Lethal the math.
Oh, that is going to do
my
it.
goodness.
That is going to do it. Yann Alexandre Chouinard is going to win with that Ice Magic in combination with Trample. Going to get the job done. Jody just shrugs his shoulders and says, maybe I could have blocked a little bit differently. And now, this is what we were talking about right at the top, how a win can change so much and how a loss can change so much. Yann started 7-0. Lost the 8-0 match, lost the first round of day number 1 here. Might be thinking, okay, well, it was a great start for me, and now my tournament's kind of going down the tubes, especially, you remember game 1 of that match?
Yeah.
You see all those cards that Jody had?
He got stomped.
He got rolled in game 1.
was not close.
Right? Barely ekes out game number 2, and then game number 3. Now, okay, well, here's Zodiark again. Great. And Jody's got Sir Conrad, and what am I going to do to try to win this game? And was able to just sneak it out. So now, back on the winning ways.
Yeah, and this is a big win for Yann for a lot of reasons. It's not just that, okay, you got to win. It's that you just stopped a streak of losses because you were on a 2-loss streak. You beat a deck that had won while your deck had lost. And you did it by playing really tight margins, really well in all 3 games, and feeling like you stole it. Feeling like a game that you shouldn't have won, you just got away with winning. That gives you some momentum. And momentum is pretty big when you're getting into these later rounds of a Pro Tour and you're playing against all great opponents, but you're feeling yourself. You're like, I can hang.
Yeah.
I can keep up.
You're going to lose sometimes in Pro Tours. Not everyone goes undefeated. Actually, you know what? Most people don't. So Yann is back on the winning track. We got one more round of Final Fantasy Limited to bring to you. Marshall and Paul will be here in just a bit. Don't go anywhere. We're having a blast.